Hope everyone's having a great afternoon. So, this is a story that I need to say before we start this conversation. Sometime last week, I've been doing podcasting here and there for the past 8, 9 years. And last week, I kind of got discouraged. And see, initially, I started with the Accessibility Corner, focusing on people's disability services and community resources. And I kind of deviated from that. I started going to other stuff that really didn't focus on disability. Kind of did it, but kind of didn't. And so I was getting kind of like frustrated, tired of it, because I lost my focus, so to speak. A blind guy telling you that. So I posted on Facebook that, you know what, I think it's time for me to, And I got a call from someone I never expected. And we've spoken before, but not really to the point where this gentleman called me Dr. Juarez. And he basically told me, what are you doing? Get back into the game. Information is needed out there. And it's true, folks. People with disability are such a underserved community. And it's shows like this that help us get more inclusive. So thank you, Dr. Juarez. And he also offered to host a show with me. Thank you, sir, for doing that, because sometimes you need that little shaking or wake up, like, hey, what's wrong with you? So I do appreciate that, Dr. Juarez, for you kind of reaching out to me and kind of putting me back in focus. And I do appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Well, George, I think the Accessibility Corner is a really important service to the community.
Just
And I just thought there's no way that we could lose this, just because some things didn't work out. So I thought, I think it'd be great if I could join you and we could take it from there, because there are a lot of people, even in this election cycle, that need to be asked, well, what are you doing for the community?
mhm.
And if elected, what do you think of doing to help the community as well? And there are also a lot of people that uh, people need to hear from. So I think it's a very unique and great service, your podcast, the Accessibility Corner. And I felt it was something that needed to continue. So,
Yeah, because when I first started, Mr. Juarez, Dr. Juarez, when I first started is I wanted to do. I've always been a resource guy. I've always been the outreach guy. When I was at the Borderplex, I always did outreach. So when I wanted to know more information, and this really started from a story. I'll tell you a real quick story. So a family friend, their mom had a disability. So they were a senior, and they reached out to me, Mijo, what can you do to help my mom? I'm like, what do you mean? Because she's okay. I mean, she's able-bodied, or ambulatory, but she's by herself. I go to work and she's getting depressed because she feels like she's not the same person she used to be, which a lot of us feel like that, either without or with disabilities, right? But so I'm like, you know what? Let me see what I could do. So I called around. I wasn't working, so I had a lot of free time. So I started calling around, and I found a program called the Senior Companion Program. It's by is a I went blank on the clinic, La Fe Clinic, and what they do, they give you up to 20 hours a week, and the person goes out there, volunteer, and they sit with you. They cook maybe a small lunch, and they'll sit with you, just talk or play games. And so this person took advantage of it, their mom, and she's coming maybe 4 or 5 months later. This has been a while back. She's like, God, George, that really made a difference in my mom. Now she's more talkative, more. And ever since then, I'm like, you know what? Like you said, Dr. Juarez, people don't know that information. That could go in a bad way. What I mean by that is, if someone has a disability and they're depressed, what happens sometimes? Unfortunately, they commit suicide because they're alone. But there's resources out there that could help them. And so, like I said, Dr. Juarez, I do appreciate you kind of give me that virtual Will Smith pop in the head and say, But not only that, folks, Dr. Juarez, do me a favor. Tell me about what you told me a while back about your upcoming academics regarding the teachings you're going to do, which I think is really neat, folks, about the disability history or
well,
history and disability.
I had long thought of offering a class on disability history, but I approached the humanities, which is a department at UTEP, on teaching disability, some aspect of disability studies. So the director said, well, it needs to be within the context of the humanities. The humanities are art, religion, philosophy, performance studies, and so forth. So he said, well, can you put together a course called maybe disability represented in the humanities? And I said, oh, great. You know, I have a background in art. And I thought, oh, it'd be great to present disability, how disability manifests itself in the arts, in literature, in creative writing. I know we have some creative writers out there. And I was thinking, and then invite some of the individuals in the community who do art, who do performance. There have been some groups that do even theater performance, and so I thought this was great. It'd be a great opportunity. So this course, that's if it makes, will be offered in the fall at UTEP. But since then, since I've been researching, I've been asking various people about if they had heard any disability studies courses being taught. And in 2000 and 2001, Maria Perez, who in the sociology department, she offered courses to social workers on disability and the disability rights movement. And she told me she had 15 students, which is great. But I think the whole aspect of disability needs to be communicated across the aisle to other people who might think that it doesn't affect them, because uh, a lot of people have said you're like a car accident away from becoming disabled.
Yep.
And I think with the aging baby boomers, a lot of individuals will become disabled for some reason or another. And it's there's this concept of aging in place. Have you ever heard of aging in place? That
No, sir.
that we should all be. I think that's the right term. I don't know. I maybe yeah, aging in place. And so I think we all need to be aware of the services that are out there, because we may need to use them. I myself, in 2013, I was living out of town, and I went out. I was working at the University of North Texas, and I went out on a walk, and then I went through an area that had mud in it, but it was so dark that I didn't see it. And all of a sudden, I started falling face first, face down, and I almost broke my glasses. And then I tried to get up, but I felt my right knee swelling, and it was real painful. So the good thing is that I had my phone, so I called the campus police, and I had my employee ID, and they called an ambulance. And so since 2013, I had fallen before, but that was a significant fall, and I broke my knee. And
Ouch.
so then they the ER doctor, put my knee together, but he had put some screws in, and then at the end of the 6 weeks, when they evaluated my knee, the screws were separating my knee. So I decided to come back to El Paso, and I saw a doctor here, and the doctor that saw me, he said, "Who did this to you?" I mean, he was upset, and I told him what had happened, and he said, "Well, we'll fix it." And he fixed it, but still, I still have ongoing mobility issues. I use a cane at
And
first.
that's what you, like you said, Dr. Juarez,
Right.
just by that little walk,
Yeah,
folks. It's COVID. Look at COVID. It's a long haul COVID. People
right.
are
Long
having,
COVID,
you
right.
know, I
People
mean,
having issues, right? And so we live in a world where, in an instant, something will happen to you, and so now you enter into the world of disability, and a lot of people don't know the resources,
yep.
don't know the resources that are available. And I think a program like this, to taking terms from religion to witness to people about the resources that are out there, to discuss some of the concepts like we have a large retired military population,
Hmm.
and many of those veterans are have disabilities. And I think also to get a perspective into how veterans are dealing with disability, and I think it's an eye opener. It's an eye opener
Yes.
because we have the veterans. We're losing. Well, we've lost the World War II veterans, and then we have from there we have the Korean veterans. There's a few Korean veterans uh, around, and then Vietnam and other subsequent wars. And so there are a lot of veterans out there who would, share their story because their stories are important and unique, and people need to know what they have gone through. So there's a
Yes.
lot of groups here in El Paso and actually around the country who are trying to work together um, to make it better for disabled veterans, disabled people, and it's just I think it's a civil rights issue that needs more attention, and sooner or later, a lot of people are going to be in it, and it's better that they become educated as to what's out there,
Yeah.
George.
Not only that, Dr. Juarez, like I said, going back to the original thought, is when I when that person reached out to me, I reached out. I looked around for resources, and like, okay, I found the La Fe Clinic, and I went beyond that. And I've always been like I said, podcasting. So I'm like, maybe I could learn podcast or learn resources from podcasts, right? Like I hear it and I could pass it along, or share it on Facebook or whatever. So I looked, Dr. Juarez, I looked and looked on Google and the internet and you name it. I couldn't find one. And I'm like, wow, that is crazy. Thinking about all this stuff out there, folks. You'll be amazed at all the resources. And there's no distribution or point of distribution where we could send out the information out. So hopefully with this show, folks, that would change at least one person's life. And if it does that, hey, we've done our job. That's for sure. Talking about real quick, Dr. Juarez, when you said aging in place, there's this service. We'll talk about this sometime in the show, down the road. It's called restive services. Okay, folks who are listening, it's called restive services. So if you're caring for someone, like me, me and my wife, at one time we were caring for my mom before she passed. It's very stressful, very very stressful. Changing them and taking. We had to use a Hoyer lift to take her out of the bed, and it was a lot of work, but we did it because my mom. But the point is, it was very stressful, tiring. It's 24/7. She had to go to the restroom at 2 in the morning. We had to take her out of the bed, and so we found this thing just by accident. It's called AAA, Rio Grande AAA, called the Area Aging, Rio Grande Area Aging. And what they do by grants. They offer you, your family, what's called restive services. So what they do, they'll come in and they'll take your place. And they'll tell you, like let's say you, Dr. Juarez, you know what, Mr. Juarez, Dr. Juarez, rest. Go to the store, go to the park, relax, we got this. They do up to 3 to 6 months, depending on the grants. And they also help pay for diapers, wipies, all the good stuff. So that's kind of information that we want to put out. So,
Yeah,
but
well, that's a great service.
yes,
Uh,
oh yeah,
yes, because we also did that with my mother, que descanse en paz. Uh, we all, we were able to get her a hospital bed. We had a Hoyer lift, and it's a lot of work.
it is,
It's a
huh?
lot of work. And when you kind of look at how we took care of our parents, and you ask yourself, is that going to be me in the future?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
these services I think are important. It would have been so good to have known that when my mother was around, if uh, we could have tapped into a service like that.
yeah,
And the bottom line of the whole concept of aging in place is that people need to retain their dignity
yes,
about helping them try to keep as much of and there's no such a thing as a normal life, but a life that they're used to, surrounded by their family, surrounded by, assisted by these services, because that's the really important thing, in the Mexican American community. You know how some of our families are. They
same.
they don't want someone to come visit them. They're saying, no, I'm not going to have a stranger in my house.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to let that guard down because people want to help you.
Yeah.
And
And then
they
you
can
have to
help.
get the service. Yes, you have to get
Right.
that help.
And you have to let them come and help you. There comes the point where you have to, allow them to help you. But, many of our relatives, even our brothers and sisters, are like, no way, I'm not going to have a stranger in my house.
Right. That's
So,
what we said. We're like, we're not gonna have somebody. But you know what? Like you said, Dr. Quad, at the end of the day, our culture wants us to take care of our mom or our father or
right,
or our daughter
right,
or our
right.
son.
Yes.
So hopefully with this show, folks, we're kind of give you a quick synopsis of what we want to do with this show, where we want to take it, and I believe we have a lot of potential, especially with you, Dr. Juarez, with your resources, especially in the arts, because kind of transition to the first discussion that I want to have is disability awareness. You hit it perfect on the head there, Dr. Juarez. Show not the limitations. I always say people with disabilities don't have limitations, only potential. And what I mean by that is, like you said, Dr. Juarez, the arts,
Yes.
or being a writer, or being this, or being an actor or an actress. So, but that all ties into what we call disability awareness. And this show, we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to want to show what you can do. We're not worried about what you can't do, because you can't do it. But let's focus on what you can do. So what I want to do before we go further too, there's two clips. We don't own the rights to this video. They are from YouTube. The first one is, I believe it's called, I went blank on the name of the, it'll show it in the video. And the second one is for PBS. And it talks about, the first one is called Disability Awareness. And it kind of gives you an overview of what we're about to talk about in our conversation. But I think this video gives good context to our discussion. I'm going to go ahead and play that video. Okay, Mr. Dr. Juarez?
Yes, sure.
I feel so blessed to be able to just live my life and have people be motivated by it.
I have a spinal cord injury. And so when I was seeing people roll by, I was like, wow, so that's what I'm gonna look like.
I think I knew I was different. I think it's cancer and kids.
I was born paralyzed. I was born with spina bifida. So I've been paralyzed my whole life, and it's the only life I know. So I had to kind of grow into learning I was different.
My biggest insecurity is my legs. So I decided, hey, if that's my biggest insecurity, then I'm gonna start a gene line. And all of the pictures are based around my jeans and my legs and other people's legs. And that's where I realized that it's okay to be different, because once you embrace it, your entire world changes.
People need they're allowed to react to me a lot of times. So like, I make little jokes like, hey, calm down, it's okay. I'll be okay.
I would have people treat me as if I wasn't really there, and I would have people treat me like they didn't want anything to do with me. And perhaps it's because they were scared and they didn't know any other response.
One of my favorite things is when I'm out in public and I have all my girls with me who are all in chairs, who are all gorgeous. And we literally love when we see heads just turn.
Society doesn't correlate disability and being attractive. We are beautiful people. Everyone's beautiful in their own way, but we can be stylish. We can be gorgeous and stunning and fabulous, as I like to say, because yes, I see myself as being fabulous.
Being a dancer, once a dancer, always a dancer, I didn't stop. So I would go out to the clubs and I would get my boogie on. And I was surprised by how guys would approach me and be like, hey, you're hot. And they wouldn't say, you're still hot. They would say, you're hot.
There is the black and white. There's the bad and there's the good. So as long as you're focusing on the good, then the bad just seems to melt away.
We're only given one life, and you gotta be proud of it.
You want to bust a couple of moves? Oh.
Perfect. Let's get a cut.
Well, that's how kind of what we were both talking about there, Dr. Juarez, regarding the appearance of people, appearance, I can't say that word correctly, of what people, when they see us, people with disabilities. And let me ask you a quick question, Dr. Juarez, and those who are watching. I've always asked this question when I ever been asked to do talks and whatnot, especially in front of parents and kids. What's the biggest barrier that you feel is out there for people with disabilities, Dr. Juarez?
I think the biggest barrier is that people don't know what the resources are,
That's one.
and they don't really know how to who to contact. And I think they might know what to say, but they don't know what their rights are either.
Yes.
So I think the American with Disabilities Act, I think it's really important. It spells it out, but they've never read it. They've never gone over it. And so they have a really good idea of what their rights are, but they really don't. So I think it's important to even talk about those issues and
Yes.
and how the law has changed over time. I remember this must have been maybe 1999 or 1998. I was actually living in Buffalo, New York, and they decided to have a conference there called the Oral History Association. It was a conference of oral historians, and they asked me to be on a committee to select a paper to read papers that people had written about uh, various issues and uh, using a process that's called oral history, where you interview people and you ask them a list of questions. And this student had written he did a paper, like 20-page paper or so, on the history of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the actual legal document. And he interviewed various people and so forth. And I thought that was such an excellent paper. Myself and I was head of the committee. We give him the award. And so
Really?
during the conference, he came. We sent him the means to come to the conference, and he showed up in a wheelchair, wearing a tie and a suit and everything. And he was running around, very energetic. And I sat next to him, and I told him, we really appreciate your paper. Well, this student went out. I think he was studying history. He went out and became a professor.
Really?
And
Wow.
I've never really reached out to him and told him, remember me when we give you your award. And so by telling you this story, I want to tell you that disability and the resources and everything else we will be talking about is a very human process. We're all human. We have needs. We have responsibilities, and it's who we are. Fine. And I think sometimes people who have these needs may not know where to go or what to say, or they don't know what the rights are. They think that, I think some cultures think that we're asking for too much, that we're being too demanding. And some people have this notion of being independent, but there comes a time where it's important to ask for help. And then, as you know, in the Mexican American culture, the men are kind of machos, like, I'm not gonna call, so and so and get this, I have my pride and my family, whatever. And there comes a time you have to let that go, because you need help. And there's these agencies apply for funds to do this, and they want to help the community.
And that's folks, especially if you have barely become what we call newly disabled, either through a mobility impediment or vision impaired or hearing, you're gonna freak out, or if you're, just say, your family member, or your dad or mom or sister or brother. Don't be afraid to reach out, like Dr. Juarez is saying. Ask those questions. Hey, can I do? Matter of fact, there's some funding through the city, through the community development department, and actually, now depending on the money available, they'll actually help you if you own the home, make it ADA accessible. They'll modify the restrooms, put a ramp in. So even there's stuff out there, folks. Just ask. Reach out to me, George Zavala, or Dr. Juarez. We'll find you. Because like you said, Dr. Juarez, information is very powerful. You being a professor, I'm talking to the choir here, but information is powerful. You know your rights. Know what's out there to not only help yourself, but help your tia, your mom. Because like you said, Dr. Juarez, unfortunately, and it's funny you said that. Now I'm thinking about it. Me and my wife were talking about that just a few minutes ago before the show. What about us? Like you say, Dr. Juarez, we don't have kids. You know, I don't have no brothers and sisters. My wife does. But what happens to us when we get old? We're going to need resources. We're going to need those services. Because I want to live at home. I don't want to live in an institution or, you know. And I've heard that. Let me tell you a quick story. We got a call. This is many years ago. Did you ever know Frank Lozano?
It sounds familiar. He
was through Adapt. Him and Jose Lara. And so this is years ago. We got a call. Check this out, Dr. Juarez. From Alma Gordo. A lady was 62, 63 years old. Still in good health. She was blind. Her husband passed away. She had no kids. So her siblings didn't know what to do. Like you said, they were scared. Or that video said they were scared. And so they put her in a nursing home. She called Frank crying. Frank, get me out. And so he was pissed. You knew Frank? Those who know what I'm talking about. Frank was a firecracker. That man, he was my hero. He was him and Jose Lara. But they went and took her out. Got her an apartment. Just because she's blind, they put her in a nursing home. So, you know, like you said, Dr. Juarez, we want to be independent. We want to be at home. So come on, let's use those resources, right? So
yes, and I also want to say that sometimes family wants to help, but they are also the problem because basically they might say, "Oh, you're not that bad, you know, just take it. Just be a macho and just take it. You're not that bad. You don't need the assistance of strangers." You know, that's also keeps people from getting assistance because your family will tell you, "Oh, you know, you've been like this for a year, so what happened? You know, you're going to be begging for services." So the stereotypes and perceptions are out there, and I think it's your right to have the quality of life that you deserve, no matter who you are, right?
Yes, sir. Amen. Oh, going back to that question I asked you about what's the biggest barrier. I let me go back to that real quick. So I asked that question to everyone, and I've asked I asked the mayor, I've asked all these people this question, and they all say this and like you did, Dr. Juarez, which is all those are valid. They are valid, but I think the biggest barrier, because I've seen it through either advocacy that I've done or my friends and family, is perception.
Right.
Because no matter what, like right now, I could be talking to you. Nobody knows I'm blind until I say it. Until I get up and walk with my cane, and they're like, "Oh, he's blind." Or like they see you, "Oh, Dr. Juarez," and they see you with a cane, like he's. So right away, they kind of you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, what they do is they pigeonhole you.
Yes, exactly.
Right, they're right. They put you in your little Hollywood square, and that's where you're going to stay. You know.
Yeah. Or there's like for me, it's funny because a bunch of my friends that are blind say the same thing. They talk to us louder. I'm gonna step away from the mic. "How are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm blind, not deaf." You know, my wife might say I have selective hearing, but but the point is, you know. So hopefully with this show, folks, we're kind of laying the foundation for future shows. We're gonna talk about all the stuff that needs, like you said, Dr. Juarez, and you're right, that needs to be discussed. We're gonna talk some subjects that you don't want to hear, because there's some things I do want to talk about. Like, if you're disabled, how did it become, or how did it translate into you getting married, or how does the social cycle or social environment treat you if you're a female with a disability or a male, or how do you get a job, or all this stuff needs to be discussed because you know what, Dr. Juarez, if we're saying it, there's someone out there that's watching that's going through it. There's someone that we're talking to right now that says, "That's happening to me."
Right.
And we want you, you're not alone,
Right. And also this concept of, like I tell you, either family members who are not disabled They tell you, "Oh, you're not that bad." I mean, you're not that disabled. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like, I mean, when you enter into the area of disability, it's for you to kind of decide, and your doctor, right? Your doctor tells you, right?
Hmm.
And so, but often relatives and even spouses, partners, they say, "Oh, you're not that bad," but I mean, come on. I mean, just because they're not experiencing the difficulties you're experiencing it. And I remember, I'll tell you a quick story. So when I basically, this was maybe after 2013, I went to a conference to present in Portland, and I was in a panel, and everyone was younger than myself, and so I went to this conference, and we were going to have a meeting before we presented, and they kept changing the meeting. Oh, we're not going to meet at that hotel, we're going to meet 4 blocks away at this place, and then they would change it again. And for me, um, with mobility issues, that was a big problem.
Just.
That was a
Mhm.
big problem. But these young people, oh, they didn't care. They were running around and all that. And I brought it up to them, and they all looked at me like, "What's he talking about?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't see
Hey,
it.
let me tell you this, Dr. Juarez. Now, I experienced it. So you probably did was your mom or dad. The time it takes to get ready. Like me, I get ready real quick and just my wife gives me my clothes, my own knows, right? But when you get elderly or you have a disability that you can't move around. For example, you had like a friend of ours. He had polio. He couldn't move from his chest down, only his arms. I think his right arm. Like my mom, it took us literally 45 minutes to get her ready. So if she wanted to go to a movie or go with her friends, it was a task. It was 45 minutes, get her dressed, make sure she's okay, go to the restroom, take her pills, put her on the bus, and then, so like you said, Dr. Juarez, those young folks or people that don't have a disability, no, 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 don't make a big deal of it. But when you experience it and you see it, it's in your household, then you're gonna say, "Oh crap, I need help." And this is what we're here for. We're going to try to help you with those things. Not only physical resources, folks, but mental resources for your mental health. Because as you know, Dr. Juarez, taking care of someone that's disabled or elderly is stressful. Because
Yeah.
number one, you see your parent or your spouse or your child suffering or in pain or have chronic whatever, and that stresses you out. And then plus, that they need all these services. So, that's one thing I do want to introduce into this conversation is mental health, of the caregivers and the person with a disability. Like the veterans, like you said, Dr. Juarez, the veterans. We have, X amount of veterans here. You don't think that coming home from war, I know a guy came from Afghanistan. He was in the Air Force. He went normal, quote unquote. He came back. Both of his eyes were blown out. He went blind. So how do you transition from quote unquote normal to blind or
Yes.
walking to not walking? So those are the kind of conversations we're going to have, and I think that's going to really be important. But like you kind of mentioned earlier, Dr. Juarez, you need to know your rights too. Okay, there's resources, but at the same time, you need to know your rights. And what I mean by that is know what's eligible or what's coming to you in regards to services or just anything in general. When I'll say this, and make sure I say this correctly, the ADA is not meant to make me special. Okay? It's meant for me to be equal. That's it. I want the same services that you have, so the ADA affords me that opportunity, either to legislation or to whatever it needs to do to push that ADA forward, because it still needs work. But the ADA allows me to be equal, not special. Okay? Because I always hear this. Well, I want this, I want that. It's supposed to be where you have equal access. That's it. Like they say, equal rights. So hopefully with that kind of discussion, you understand that, kind of put that in context. Because the ADA, without that, Dr. Juarez, you're talking to me before the show. Very interesting, folks. I hope, can you say that a little bit? Or about Benjamin Franklin, 1771? Just going
Well,
back. to now,
Yeah.
like just how crazy that is.
Yes, no, I was talking to George that in 1771, they were pushing to create asylums for people who had mental issues. And one of the supporters of that was Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was a radical. Like, I mean, you know, people who are radical now, Benjamin Franklin was 10 times the radical because he was an out of the box thinker. He was one of the signers of, you know, a lot of important legislation in the founding of our country. And Benjamin Franklin was a mover and a shaker. He was there at the forefront, creating change. And I think we have some of those people among us, and some of those people are involved in the disability movement because I feel that disability is a civil rights issue. It's a civil
Yes.
right issue that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be solved for many people that don't know what their rights are.
Yes, and that video we're going to play next from PBS, Dr. Juarez hits perfectly on that. And I'll tell you a story about what she kind of mentions about her going to school. So we're going to go ahead and play that video, okay?
Okay.
Since childhood, Judy Heumann has faced ableism, institutionally, socially, and personally. New York's public school system prevented her from enrolling, and she was often bullied or excluded by her own peers. After a lifetime of activism, she is finally seeing a shift in how people with disabilities are viewed and treated. Her book is called Being Human, an unrepentant memoir of a disability rights activist. And she's the star of tonight's Brief but Spectacular.
When I was 5 years old in Brooklyn, New York, on East 38th Street, my mother did what every other parent did when their kid was 5. She took me to school to register me. And this was in the early 1950s. There were no motorized wheelchairs, so she pushed me to school, and it wasn't accessible. She pulled me up the steps, and the principal said I couldn't go to school because I was a fire hazard. I don't really know that there was an explanation. It just was. I think the average person, they see disability as a threat to not being able to do things as people have typically done them. And I think there's truth in that. But the question is it because one has a disability or because society itself has constructed itself in such a way because they haven't seen us? Discrimination against disabled people has existed from the beginning of time. And we're in a place right now where, because of other movements, civil rights movement, the women's movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, etc., people are speaking up and out. One of the first pieces of legislation that the disability community really engaged in was getting regulations developed for a provision of law called Section 504. Section 504 says you can't discriminate against someone who has a disability if the entity is receiving money from the federal government. It was the first time that many of these young disabled people felt a part of something and really felt that they were making a difference, not only for their lives, but for the lives of many others. There is a shift, I believe, going on in our society where we're looking at race and gender equality and disability as issues that we need to address, that diversity is something that makes our companies stronger, that diverse businesses provide better services for customers. I also am a very big believer that the disability rights community cannot stand on its own. We need to be working with all other movements, and we want all other movements to be inclusive of disabled people. If we are actively learning and working together, we can do things like make sure when housing is being built in our communities that it's accessible, not just for people who have physical disabilities today, but if you're going to have a physical disability tomorrow. I think having a disability really has allowed me to do and get in touch with so many things and opportunities that otherwise would not have happened. People look at us as the label of our disability. And it is a part of who we are, but it is not who we are. My name is Judy Human, and this is my brief but spectacular take on the disability rights movement.
Judy Human, so inspiring.
Yes,
Well,
and I think we're all part of that disability rights effort or the
yes, sir.
disability rights movement, and it's important to tell other people that they're part of it too. So
And like you were saying, kind of mentioned it earlier too, Dr. Juarez said, politicians are as you know, we my other show, we interview candidates. And the reason why is to educate them as to what we need to be more inclusive. But it, like you say, it's up to us to advocate
right,
for our rights. Because we just can't sit here like, you know what, I want this, I want that. But you have to go out there and get it.
yes,
So all this we're talking about, folks, is going to encompass the show. Like I said, we're doing the foundation. So the thing that I want to emphasize, you go ahead, Dr. Juarez.
no, and I also want to say, most when you really think of it, most of the time, say confrontations happen when a problem arises, right? A problem arises, and then you go and you try to meet with them and so forth. Can't there be maybe ongoing meetings where maybe groups would say, this is where we are now, but we want to be further along. What can we do to help you as a legislator? What can we do to help you come up with a solution to this problem that we can solve down the road, right?
Yes.
It needs to be this two-way communication,
Yes.
not just approach the politicians or the policymakers when there's a problem. Because when there's a problem, it's a little bit more immediate, and people get frustrated because they say, well, why did you come to us before? Why now? So maybe there needs to be an ongoing dialogue as to how the disability, the disabled or disability community could say, this may be happening down the road. Maybe what can we do now
To fix it, yeah.
to fix it? So
And you made a good point there, the two-way communication. That also goes to the private sector when it comes to disability rights or disability advocacy. And I'll give you a perfect example. There was a store, and I'll say it now because they fixed the issue. I don't know if it's still there. This has been years ago. Anyways, it's Circle K on Dyer, and it's talking about Chico's Tacos. I forgot the name of the street. But anyways, so at one point I was a part of ADAPT. And those who don't know, ADAPT is primarily those who use a wheelchair. And what they do, they focus on establishments. Well, that's one of the things they focus on. They have there are many facets, but what they focus on is restrooms that are not accessible. So I've been part of the game where you protest, you have that conversation, but when they don't listen, that two-way communication, like you said, Dr. Juarez, so you have to protest. But I think if you to educate the private sector as to what's required, can alleviate a lot of the issues. And what I mean by that, going back to my story, so the Circle K, the restroom was not accessible. They had one look at it, okay, and so we brought it up, and right away they kicked out that personality, that there were being a disturbance. So Frank Lozano and Jose Lara reached out to the general manager, or the regional, I guess they call it territorial manager, or a territory manager, or whatever they call it, and they ignored us. So guess what? We had to do is let our voices be heard, and we protested. And it was such a mess, Dr. Juarez. They called the cops and this and that and all this jazz. And you know what it was, folks, Dr. Juarez? To fix the issue, $120. That's it. That's it. It was one bar that needed to be adjusted in the restroom. And I'm like, wow, all that stuff could have been cleared up. And like you said, if we would have had two-way communications. So that's what I'm saying, folks. If you see something, don't be aggressive. Just talk to them, try to educate them. Now, if they ignore you, well, look, there's other avenues. Like go to your city rep or go to your county judge or county commissioner or something. But don't, I want to emphasize this. Always remember this. What you're going to do, yeah, it's going to impact you or your wife or your mom, or you're going to help them or you. But it's also going to help other people, folks. So what we're doing now, like we were talking about that earlier, Mr. Juarez, on the other conversation. What we do now is what's going to impact history. In other words, what they did in 1771, in some way, somehow, is affecting us in 2022. Okay? What we do now, folks, either by advocating for equal, I want to have a menu with large print or audible menu because I'm blind. Yeah, it's going to help me, but it's going to help those people that come behind us, or that restroom is not accessible. It's going to help you, but guess what? The other person is not going to feel segregated. Say, you know how sad it is, Dr. Juarez, to hear your friends say, let's go eat somewhere. Vámonos. Let's go there. Oh, the restroom's not accessible. Oh, let's go here. No, the sidewalk's broken. Let's go here. Folks, that's happened.
Yes.
And we're like, okay, you know what? We'll just come to your house. So how do you think that person feels?
Right.
That they can't go out to society. And he told me one time.
You okay?
Yeah. It's just sad. It's that he's so George. I'm in his wheelchair, but I'm a prisoner. I mean, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yes,
He passed away. He passed away already. But no, he said, George, and it didn't hit me until he said it. He said, George, I'm a prisoner. And I thought that he was talking about because he uses a wheelchair. He goes, I'm a prisoner. And I'm like, what do you mean? You know, I kind of being ignorant, right? Because I didn't want to make it obvious, that he's in the wheelchair.
Right.
And I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, yeah, I'm in his wheelchair, but I'm still a prisoner. I can't go out. I can't go to the restaurants you want to go to. I can't go to the store. I'm like, that's true. And this is in 2019. I'm like, wow, this man wants to be part of society, and he can't, even though he wants to be. He was an advocate also. But I'm like, wow, that's why I guess I'm so passionate about it, because, it impacts people down the road. And I'm sorry. I'm a very emotional person, folks. I do apologize. I cry for commercials too, so I just do apologize. But what I'm trying to say is, folks, is just think about that person that, like you said, Dr. Juarez, you don't know until you get into that situation. You don't know about using the Hoyer lift, how much energy that takes. Do you know, Dr. Juarez?
Right.
Yeah, so people don't know about, I went to war, I came back one ear, I'm deaf on this ear. They don't know what, so what we're trying to say is just don't know your rights, know the resources, because those are very important. Oh, I wanted to mention this earlier, Dr. Juarez. There's a resource, folks, you could use if you have a friend that, let's say they need a medical equipment, a wheelchair or a hospital bed or anything, but they don't have either the money, or they're being processed through Medicaid and they don't have access to that medical equipment. Call Valar. Valar has what they call a lending closet. And what they do, they'll lend you that equipment. They'll lend you, not give it to you. They'll lend it to you, and until you process into either Medicaid or you purchase your wheelchair or whatnot, and then you take it back. But don't go without that equipment because you need it. And I'll tell you a story real quick, folks. I had a friend of ours called. He said, George, this is an elderly blind man I know. I'm like, okay. He goes, he's using a broomstick. I'm like, what? A broomstick? What do you mean? He goes, yeah, to walk. I'm like, what? So I went, I gave him one of my canes, but I told him about there's this thing called the NFB free cane program. So they sign them up for a free cane. But like I said, folks, there's stuff out there. Just don't be afraid to ask. But before we go, Dr. Juarez, I do apologize, folks, for getting emotional.
No, it's okay.
It's so passionate. I'm very passionate when it comes to this.
I think that's what we need. We need passion.
Yes.
We need people to say, I deserve to have this. I mean, it's my right to have these services.
Let me tell you. Okay, did you hear that story when she was talking about the school about being a fire hazard? The clip we play right now. She mentioned that they didn't let her go to school because she was a fire hazard. Well, let me tell you this quick story, folks. This is where I started my advocacy, so to speak, journey. So I went to apply for an apartment. At that time, I could see. I can't see now; I just see shadows. But at that time, I could see. But I had very thick glasses. So I had gone to this apartments. I'm not going to mention the apartments. They're all Montana. I went to apply. And, I had good credit and all that stuff. I, paid the deposit. And the young man there was really nice. Yeah, you know what? Mr. Zavala, come 2 to 3 days, and we'll give you your key. Okay, cool. Again, young guy. I'm like, 24? I'm like, yeah, you have my own place and girls over. And I hope my wife's not listening to that. But anyways, so a week passes. And I get no call. I'm like, what? Like, oh, man, did I miss a call? This is when cell phones were like barely coming into place. I'm like, did I miss a call? Huh? So me and my mom went down there to the apartment. And I walk in and I see the guy. I go, hey. And he looks at me. He's like, oh, I'll talk to you right now. Okay. He had a person. And he comes up to me and goes, let's go outside. Like that. He pointed like, let's go outside. I'm like, oh, okay. What, does he want to fight? Come on, let's bring it. Not really. I go, what? What's going on? So I walk outside and I'm like, what's up? He's like, I didn't want to tell you inside the office, but the manager declined your application. I'm like, why? I paid it and I have good credit on that. No, because she thinks you might catch the apartment on fire. She can't see. I'm like, what? She was, yeah. She's denying. So that's what I'm saying, folks. Just think about how I felt. Like, wow, just because I'm blind, or I'm not blind, but visually impaired, she denied me an apartment? Wow. So that's where I started, where I'm at now. That was what, 12, 13 years ago. But for you, Dr. Juarez, I appreciate you kind of kicking me in the butt, to start this discussion again. And also, not only that, Dr. Juarez, but you always been, for many years, you always reached out to me some here and there regarding disability, and I do appreciate that, because it takes people like you. What I mean by that is educators, people of high influence that people could look at and say, oh, wow, Dr. Juarez is talking about that. Or, oh, wow, a month ago I had the gentleman, Andrew Polk from KTSM on my show. So that, folks, like you said, Bill, helps us bring that communication, that network that we need to bring those different resources and to bring that disability awareness, because at the end of the day, folks, we got to live with each other. And we want to live happy, So hopefully with this podcast, we're going to be talking about different stuff. Send it out. I want to do, I'm going to put it into an audio podcast for those who don't have social media. And I'll upload it to either our website, novisioninternetradio.com, or you go to our Facebook page, No Vision Internet Radio, and the audio podcast will be there. So you can, distribute that, because not everybody has social media. So, but we want that information to be important,
Yes, and not everybody's on Facebook too.
Yeah, not everybody's that's why right now we're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But if we, as we know, Dr. Juarez, in our culture, a lot of the elderly don't have internet or don't have money or don't have this, but they have a computer, or they do have this. But hopefully, and majority have smartphones now because they're trying to get that access. But so we're going to do is have it in an audio format, so you can distribute that also, and then we'll put it on our website so you can look at that too. But before we go, Dr. Juarez, do you want to say anything?
Well, and I think I also invite viewers or listeners to let us know what kinds of topics they want to hear us cover, or maybe like even legal issues, right? You've had a number of people who have needed to take it to a legal issue with an attorney and all that. Not that we're going to dispense legal help here, but other ideas that maybe have not been covered, or if people want to tell their stories too, I think it's important.
Because if it's happened to you, it's happened to someone else. Now, it might be 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, but it's happened. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to mention this too. We're in the works. Mr. Juarez has some ideas that I meant for future shows. But right now we're in the works. Hopefully within the next 2 weeks, I want to say, we're going to have the executive director from Disability Rights Texas on the show and talk about the services they have, because they have a lot of free services and that help people with disabilities. And right now they're really focused on the COVID response and the access to what people with disabilities have. Folks, I could tell you a story about that, and I'm not going to do it now because that's a long story regarding COVID response to people with disabilities. But it's been fixed. Like you said, that two-way discussion. Dr. Juarez having that two-way discussion is very helpful with politicians. But that's another story for another day. But Disability Rights Texas, I know there's a few interests within the veterans community because they're important too, folks. Just because they're veterans don't mean they don't have disability. They do. A majority of them do because of war and whatnot. And as you had mentioned, Maria Perez might come on, hopefully.
Maria Perez. And I also want to tell you that a friend of mine recently I needed a picture for a project that I'm involved, and he had been after me to take my photo, and I kept putting them off and putting it off. And finally, I needed a picture, a professional picture. So I went to him, and he took my picture. And then on his wall, I started seeing pictures of a project he was doing. He's actually involved with a project where he's photographing people in Juarez who are at in a center that takes them where the project is called Mentes Hermosas. And I invited him to come to talk to my class because we're talking about asylums in the reform area. Right before the Civil War, they created asylums, and the students were just blown away. So even, what does disability look like in Juarez?
Yes.
In Juarez. And I don't know if there's any projects that help people in Juarez, because we live on the U.S.-Mexico border. We can't deny. Some people would say, well, that's Mexico. It's not the U.S. We should be only focusing on the U.S., but, we're a border city. Let's find out what's going on there, right?
That's what I've heard, and this now, I really have kind of been a while since I've been to Juarez, but I remember they're telling me recently, it was in the last 5 years, they're like, George, because I was asking a friend of ours, he recently passed away, Jose Lara. I go, what, because he used to be, that's the gentleman that had polio. He used to be an anchor in Juarez, one of the TV things, Canal 44, I think so, I forgot. But he told me, George, there's no ADA over there. What are you talking about? I'm like, what do you mean about curbs? He's like, you have to be in the streets. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And so you're right, Dr. Juarez. We need to just bring that conversation to the forefront, and hopefully, like I said, folks, hopefully this will help someone, at least that one person, make a difference in their life. That's my main goal, or our main goal. So how can they reach out to you, Dr. Juarez, on Facebook or?
I'm on Facebook. My account is open, I think. And let me see. They could also email me. Are you going to include the link somewhere? Maybe you could.
I could put in the comments.
Okay.
You want me to put your email, the one you sent me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put Dr. Juarez's email in the comments. So if someone wants to reach out to him, with me, you can just reach me on Facebook or info@novisioninternetradio.com.
Yes, and I'm also available. I'm on Twitter and on LinkedIn and on several other platforms, but you'll be able to find me, or you could also.
You're on Twitter? Really?
Yes,
Cool. Twitter. I'm gonna follow you on Twitter. I didn't know that. All right.
And then Instagram, but Instagram is a little bit. I don't know Instagram. I'm still on the fence with that, right? Although a lot of people like it, right?
Yeah, my wife likes it. I'm not really. I guess that's like pictures. I guess that's not really for me because I'm blind. But
right.
But hey, you can reach out to. I didn't know. See, now I'm going to reach out to you. How do you look? Is it Miguel Dr. Juarez, or how's it on Twitter?
No, on Twitter it's Miguel Juarez.
Miguel Juarez. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. We went 1 hour there. Dr. Juarez, not bad, huh? It went real quick.
Yeah, it went quick, yeah.
It went real quick. So, and like I said, we're going to, I forgot to mention this. How we're going to do this, Dr. Juarez? Is this weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? How are we going to do this? I forgot to. I should have asked you off air. Sorry about that.
Well, we could ask the listeners what.
Yeah.
See.
You want to do it, because there's like I said, there's a huge amount of resources out there. Oh, by the way, folks, sometime either this week or this weekend or maybe during the week, I do work full time, so it's kind of hard. I'm going to put a list of resources, recent, they're recent right now, of like 60 or 60, 65 on the novisioninternetradio.com. So if you want to go look at those resources, it ranges from senior services to veteran services to information regarding people with disabilities. So that will be either, like I said, over the weekend or tomorrow or during the week. But hopefully we'll see you either next week or 2 weeks. So we'll see you again, that's for sure. Right, Mr. Juarez, Dr. Juarez? But before we go, any last words?
For me or?
No, for you. For you, sir.
No. I just look forward to unraveling what I call the reboot of the Accessibility Corner. And it's really important. This is an important program. It's very, very much needed in this community. And maybe also, I know there's a lot of people who maybe only are stronger in Spanish. So maybe we might invite some people who are bilingual to speak, and they can speak in Spanish as well.
Okay.
I don't know. Have you ever had anyone like that on your show?
The only one that did that, the only one that did that was Ricardo Samaniego.
Okay.
But other than that, no, because I'm not gonna lie to you, my Spanish is really bad. Really, if I talk Spanish, I might insult you. I don't know what I'm saying sometimes. Well, I don't know what I'm saying in English either. But yeah, that's a very good idea. That's a very good idea because
maybe we could do a Spanish edition, and we'll try our best and speak in our Portuguese Spanish.
Right? Oh my Lord, that's gonna be fun. That's for sure. But anyways, I think I was gonna say one more thing before we went, but I forgot what I was gonna say. I guess it wasn't that important.
You got to write it down.
I was gonna say something, but anyway, I guess it's not that important. But again, folks, if you want, you want to be part of the discussion, your group, your nonprofit, or a community resource, you want to talk about testimonials, like Dr. Juarez was saying, or we want to also highlight those individuals with disabilities. I know of 4 or 5 people off my top of my head that one's a lawyer, one's a program coordinator at Valar, there's a bunch of people that we could talk to, and not to talk about their disabilities, but their abilities.
Right.
Okay, folks, I want to make sure we focus on that because, yes, we do this, we do that, but Dr. Juarez, I don't know if you could agree with me real quick. A friend of mine told me one time, he's like, George, we all had some form of disability. I go, what do you mean? Because yes, there are some people that can't do this, or there are some people that can't do that, and they're able-bodied, quote unquote. So we all have different abilities, but we do have abilities. I go, yep, that's true, we do. So that's what we're going to focus on, the abilities and how to move those abilities forward. Like Dr. Juarez was saying, to be more inclusive, know your rights, and also don't be afraid to, folks, don't be afraid. Okay, or don't be I know what you're saying, Dr. Juarez, machismo, yo puedo hacer eso, no necesito ayuda. I don't know, I've seen it. I've seen it in my own family.
Right.
Pero, well, God bless you, Dr. Juarez. We will be talking, of course. Hopefully we'll have a show soon. I'm just waiting for the response from Disability Rights Texas. Or you who are watching or listening, if you know someone that wants to come on board, you can email info@novisioninternetradio.com. And we'll do our best to bring them on. There's no fee. There's nothing. No cost to no one. Like you saw earlier, my passion. I have a passion for this, and unfortunately, it comes true sometimes. But I think that's what we need, folks. We need passion. We really, really do. We don't, that's my inspiration, just that passion I have to help others, like you do, Dr. Juarez. People don't know that about you, but you do. You help. And I want people to see that, that we have no agenda. We have nothing. We just want to help people, and hopefully with the show, we'll do that. So, God bless you. I salute you, Dr. Juarez. I salute everyone, and may everyone have a rest of a nice Saturday afternoon.
Okay, thank you, George.
Bye-bye.
Bye.